Hey, welcome to another episode of A Stronger Futures Project, where today we are going to just debunk this whole calorie myth counting stuff that we all hear. Now, what I want you to imagine, and it could be anywhere, but today we're talking about calories. But imagine you're standing in front of the mirror after weeks, maybe even months of diligently following a protocol, diligently following this calorie tracking. You're weighing out your food, you're doing all the things that the average chart says to do, and you've weighed it all out. You've weighed out the food, but you just jump on the scale and the weight's not changing. Your energy is low. You feel less inclined to continue. Nothing has budged. And there is a level of frustration that takes place in your life. Now, maybe you've not felt this way, but maybe you know somebody who has. Well, this episode is exactly for that person. But maybe it's another area of your life. You felt frustrated and maybe even felt broken. But let me tell you something. You're not broken. There's something wrong, but it's not you. It's the system. That's what's broken. And we can look at this in multiple arenas, that the system is broken because it relies on the law of averages. And the last time I checked, nobody's average. Everybody is an individual. They have their own unique designs, their own unique qualities of life and experiences of life that increase or decrease their ability to have the output. Now, this is where having somebody come beside you, having a coach, having someone that has gone through this experience and is on the outside looking in rather than you looking out from the inside. You know, the product inside of a jar can't read the label. And this is what happens. We try to read the label from the inside and we can't. So this is where it helps to have somebody to walk beside you and have accountability. Well, today we're going to dive deep into this calorie myth. I'm just so excited about this. And as I saw Lex's post, I just knew that we had to talk about this because this is just something that's been on my heart and on my mind. And I'm going to shut up now because my excitement is just going off the charts. So Lex, thanks for being here. And it's a pleasure to dive into this. What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is such a tough subject for a lot of people. Like I actually get negative comments from like people in the fitness industry sometimes because I talk about calories being BS, and then they're all like, "No, you have to count calories. You have to get into caloric deficit." I'm like, do you think that cave people like were marking on the walls as to how many carbs they had or like how many grams of each they had? And like it became so complicated. Like it used to be just like all these crappy diets, right? Like people were told like, here, diet, right? As if we're robots, as if we have no emotions, as if we just like gain weight because we just ate too much, like not involving the emotions, the psychology, the trauma, none of that. Then it was like, oh, well, we just need to eat small meals. Then it was like, okay, we need to count calories. Then it started being macros. And it's like, oh, you have someone who calculates how many grams of protein, how many grams of carbs, how many grams of fats you need to have. And then people come to me and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't hit on any of these numbers. The problem with all of that is none of that is natural to us. None of that addresses the psychology of weight loss. All of it is focused on the calories rather than what type of food we're eating. And it's not addressing health at all. And again, it's not addressing the psychology as to why did someone gain weight in the first place? What is underneath that? Because I can tell you from 20 years now in fitness industry and health industry, it's never just about the weight. I don't know anybody who was like, oh, I'm not dealing with anything. I am totally fine. My stress is low. I love my life. I just happen to eat too much. It just doesn't happen. Now, there is a certain aspect of responsibility because when I say that, people are like, well, no, they just ate too much. They're ignoring the human. They're ignoring someone who has had traumatic experience in the past, someone whose stress level is really high, someone whose gut bacteria is ridiculous and like, having antibiotics kill their gut bacteria. Some people ignore all of these things and then just say, well, just eat less. Well, what happens when we eat less? So there may be initial weight loss, but then the metabolism slows down and it adjusts to the new amount of calories. So For men, you hear this number of 1800. For women, it's usually between 1200 and 1500 that I hear. Oh, you just need to eat that many calories. Okay, fine. So then you eat 1800 calories or 1500 calories if you're female. So you may drop a few pounds. A lot of it is water weight because now you're not eating as many carbs. But then within a week or two, maybe a few weeks, the body adjusts and now it's running on that same amount of calories, on that 1500 or 1800 calories. So now we have to create another caloric deficit to drop the weight again. So now I have women who would come to me and they're like, I really cannot eat below 1200 calories. I don't know what to do. Like if I eat 900 calories, like I'm not eating anything. So then they feel restricted and deprived. And that's like this whole cycle that we see with people, whether it's just plateauing or yo-yoing, right? I also come across people who are like, oh, calorie counting works because I dropped, whatever, 50 pounds. And I'll go, great. How long did you keep it off? They're like, oh, for months, but and I'm like, did you gain it back? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so then what? They're like, well, I just restrict my calories again. I'm like, so we're normalizing yo-yoing. Like you just think that that's okay. Like you think that it's okay to once a year have to go down and up and down and up. How about we find a solution that's health oriented that works for someone for good so that their life does not have to revolve around food. It's just a part of what they do.
Yeah, everything you said there. And it is that going to that law of averages. So they pulled this arbitrary number out. And so let's just do a simple thing. So as you said, that the average man, what is an average man? Okay, so if you look up the average height of a man is 5'9". So I fall way below that. I'm 5'5". And that 4 inches difference makes a big change. It doesn't also take into account how sedentary your job is. So the more active that you are, the more that you're going to burn calories, the more that you're going to burn energy. You're going to need, your metabolism is different than if you have a sedentary job. It also doesn't take into account the amount of stress that you have. So now you've created cortisol in your body by having a high amount of stress. And then you go to the calculator, you weigh out your food, and you're weighing out food. Some of it, I wonder if it's even food. Like if I go grab and I wouldn't, a Snickers candy bar, I don't know how many calories are in that, maybe 400, 500, 600 calories. I might
about
be low.
350, if I remember correctly, something like that.
Yeah. So if I eat 3 of those candy bars, that is my capacity for the day. It is not going to give me sustained energy. It's not going to help my cardiovascular system. It's not going to help my gut health. It's not going to help my brain health. And like you said, it's physiology and it's psychology. So our physiology is determined by our psychology. So if I'm not feeling good, if I'm feeling sluggish, then guess what? My body is not running at optimal. I'm not able to have the energy to go and want to even work out.
Yeah.
And so if I follow the guidelines and I stay inside the box, I end up failing because the box is not meant for me.
No, and that's the whole problem with calories. We're focused on how many calories we eat, and we have not addressed our relationship with food. So it's like Weight Watchers, right? Like Weight Watchers is like counting points on food. Well, I know a lady who, I don't know how many points she had for the day. I just remembered that she used all her points on a chocolate cake. And then for the rest of the day, she ate salad or lettuce because lettuce had like 0 points. That's really damaging, right? So it's not teaching us, hey, what's actually going underneath there? Why are you going to that chocolate cake? What else is going on in your life, right?
Right.
It's like majority of people, when they have the amount of calories, they try to fit in all the things that they're addicted to. And my whole thing is, no, we need to look into the whole addiction and slowly get away from it. The addiction is so strong that I remember when I battled issues with weight, I remember thinking about like eating less, right? And I remember feeling sad that I won't be able to eat all this food. And that's like, I never battled the addiction to the level that some of the people I work with do, right? And I still experience that. It was like serious grieving, like sadness over the fact that I won't eat that food. So what people do is, once again, they're like, well, how can I fit in the Snickers bun? How can I fit in my cheesecake and a pizza in there, right? And there is approach to that. We can do a whole thing on fasting and actually fit that in there.
Mhm.
My thing is, we need to do this long term. So if you want to really do this for the right reason, you will slowly want to get away from food addiction. That's what I would do with my clients. We make these small, tiny changes that they can stick with. If, let's say, pizza is their serious like go-to food, we find healthy ingredients for them to make it at home, or we find a way for them on occasionally to have that pizza without it being a cheat meal, because that's a whole nother thing. This whole cheat meal is now creating it to be the forbidden fruit that we now want and crave. And like, I had a client who in the past who said, well, I was good all week, so like I'm going to treat myself with something this weekend. I'm like, that's the language we need to address, because you are like, I've been so good, now I'm going to be bad. And you're saying you're going to treat yourself with food that's poisoning you, right? And so there's a whole nother thing about food poisonous, but it is highly addictive. It is designed to be highly addictive. And
Right.
we have to first address that psychology. Why do I need to lose weight? What actually got me here in the first place? Am I willing and open enough to be vulnerable to actually get into what's going on in my psychology? Like, I'm not a therapist and I don't dig into past with my clients. What we do is we make sure that it doesn't affect their future anymore.
Mhm.
So how can I make sure that these actions that I brought in from the beliefs from the past and emotions, how can I shift those in a gentle, non-disruptive way that I can then make sure that I never have to worry about these things again?
Yeah. And I want to bring up the example also as the calorie counting and the law of averages. So let's say we have Tom and Jordan, and let's just use this arbitrary number that Jordan eats 4,000 calories a day. He weighs 200 pounds. He's 6 foot tall. Tom eats 1,800 calories a day. He's 6 foot tall, and he maintains the 200 pounds. Now, if Tom eats as many as Jordan does, he'll gain weight. If Jordan eats just only the law of average, if you average those two out, it's 2,900. If he only eats 2,900 calories a day, he's going to actually lose weight. But Tom's not.
Yeah.
He's going to gain weight because his metabolism is different. It is that this is where the law of averages. This is where the whole myth behind. I think it's just almost kind of ridiculous that we've trained ourselves. We've bought into the scam artist methodology that we weigh food out, even though it expands beyond our plate. If we weigh it out and we scan the barcode and it says that we can have this many calories, and we go on this perpetual cycle, or people go on this perpetual cycle, and then they go on a feast and famine. They starve themselves, or they engorge themselves because they say, you know what, it's just my genetics. And
Yeah.
I want to say genetics, they already know that they have demystified, they have broken the genome. So there's no genetic control over your control. It's just
Yeah.
not there. And
So yeah, genes are very important to address because so many people hold on to that story, right? And again, it's the story that we've heard. What we eat and how we live and our stress level and sleep and all of these things that, again, we have to address, they turn on and off our genes. So even if we have a genetic mutation of sorts, it doesn't mean we're going to have that disease. Now, there's only like 5% of people that are born with genetics or genes that like are just already on and they have to stay on, and that's when people are born with certain things. But the rest of us, where our lifestyle is more than 95%. And I got one step deeper for you there when you're talking about calories. So from all my grade school, I do remember one thing or middle school, I remember one thing from biology, and that's the energy. So energy cannot be, we're going to mix biology and physics here. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can just be transformed from one form to the other, right?
Mhm.
So the sun actually gives energy to the plants, along with water and nutrients, obviously. But the sun is the main one that gives energy to the plants that grow. Animals, and we eat those plants. If we eat animal meat, we eat also the energy from the sun, because the sun gave the energy to the plants, which then created again. So even if we eat meat and or plants, we're still getting the energy from the sun, which then expands in us and lets us do things, right? We have energy to do things, create, run, think, all of these things. Like that's where the energy expenditure goes. And then it goes further from there, right? The energy cannot be created or destroyed. Now, that's the proper way that it goes. It has like a whole cycle thing, right? So we get the energy from the sun. My question is, where does that energy, and that's the energy we get, that's the kilojoules that the actual calories calculate into. Calories are supposed to calculate how much energy we get from that food. That's kilojoules. Sometimes in Europe, you also say kg. J. Now, my question for processed food is, where's the energy from the sun? And if it's not the energy from the sun, which is the most natural form of energy for us humans, where's that energy and what kind of energy is it creating in my body? Where am I getting that energy from? Where are my kilojoules? Where is my calories coming from when it's a highly processed foods? And how does that cycle continue? And this is where you see it and you're like, wait a minute, actually people who eat processed foods actually don't have energy. So we want to treat our bodies like if you had a car that runs on diesel and you put regular gas in it and you're like, why? What's wrong? Why doesn't it function well? That's what we're doing to our bodies. And then we're like, I don't know why I'm feeling depressed. I don't know why I'm gaining weight. I don't know why I'm feeling a certain kind of way. And it's all these things that we have to, I always go back to that. We have to look into how humans lived for so long, what's natural for us, and where did the disruption happen? Because the disruption happened only in the last 100, 200 years, right? Like our brain evolved on regular nutrient dense food that comes from nutrient dense soil, comes from the sun, right? It doesn't have pesticides. It was food. And now we have that, we call it organic food, which also sometimes is questionable as well itself. And there's other food that is full of pesticides already in the soil that is not nutrient dense, already food that is not nutrient dense. We add to that high stress, lack of sleep. We add, polyester, which is plastic everywhere that we breathe, that we sleep on, that we wear on our clothes. And it's like a perfect concussion for depression and for having mental and other health issues. Because for me, mental health comes first. If we don't
Yep.
set the foundation for mental health, everything else is worthless. Now we get mental health through working on our emotional health, through working on these things, through working on our physical health. But mental health is supposed to be the foundation that we build then upon.
Yeah, and the whole idea behind mental health, um, it was given such a stigma years ago, and I think people are really waking up to the fact that mental health is brain health, and
Yes.
it is how do we treat our brain? What are we feeding it? Knowing that it absorbs 35% of the calories that we intake every day. Now we got 2% of our body weight that is making more decisions than we can even possibly imagine. And the amount of hydration that we bring in and the kind of hydration that we're bringing in. And then the calories that we're bringing in, the kind of foods that we're feeding it. Like you said, all fuel is not equal. If you put gas in, it's fuel. But if you put gas in a diesel engine, you're going to be walking. There's just no way around it. It's the same way with our body. If we're putting the wrong fuel, and I don't even call that other stuff fuel, I call it's just taking up space. And what it's doing is it's making our body overwork unnecessarily on product that is going in, and the body is trying to go, what in the world did you put in here? I don't know how to break this down because it's not natural. So if
Absolutely.
I throw plastic in my garden and bury it, I'm going to dig it up next year and it's going to be plastic. If I throw food out there, or let's say old vegetables or the cutoffs of whatnot, and I bury it and I go to dig it up, it's gone. Why? Because the system is able to process it. And that's the same thing that happens in our body. We're actually throwing plastic into our gut and expecting to get nutrient out of it. And it says it's impossible.
Yeah.
Everything is over processed. It's got more food coloring and artificial flavors that makes you think that you're getting something, but you're really not. And this is what is so just
Yeah.
promoted. And people go, well, surely they wouldn't be able to do that legally. And I'm going, yeah, really? Right. Right.
Yeah, no, it's there's so much to it, right? Like the coloring, right? For example, or all these ingredients, right? They're destroying our gut health. And so let's even go that route. When they say, well, FDA approved it. First of all, I have a whole hour I can spend on FDA, but let's just say, okay, FDA approved it because it said in small amounts, it's considered safe. Great. But it's in a small amount in your breakfast, it's in a small amount in your lunch, it's in a small amount in your dinner, it's in a small amount in your snacks, it's in a small amount in your soda, it's in a small amount in your laundry detergent, it's in a small amount in your shampoo, it's in a small amount in your conditioner, it's a small amount in your soap. Over a course of a day, that's not a small amount. Over a course of a year, that's a really huge amount. Over a course of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, people are wondering why they're getting sick. Now, at this point in time, and I do want to have my own farm, but unless you have your own farm, it's almost nearly impossible to avoid all these things. However, we can learn from that. And going back to those calories, that's where like original lies start, because people want to feel better. And then they come in and they say, I want to lose weight, because they think that that's going to make them feel better.
Mhm.
And then they're lied to about calories. So what they do is, again, we didn't address the psychology of it. They go, okay, I'm going to eat 1,200 calories, whatever. And then they start yo-yoing because they feel restricted and deprived, and they're eating highly addictive food. So even though they're eating 1,200 calories, they're still running on addiction. It's like telling, a drug addict, well, just take less drugs. Like, it's fine. You'll be okay. And so that's how our body is running. So then people, again, they're the ones carrying guilt and shame. Their body is the one that has hormones out of whack. Their gut health, which is the one that's responsible for cravings, is the one that doesn't even know what's going on and is looking for all these sugar, because sugar is the addiction that we're battling. We're having low energy. Once again, the whole sleep, nutrition, like all these other things. And then people are like, well, I wanted to lose weight, but I don't know what happened. And then they carry the guilt and shame. So when we have guilt and shame, we have, when we feel guilt and shame about our food choices, we activate the reward center in our brain, which makes us have to reward ourselves immediately. So
Right.
what we do is we'll go, I'll just have one cookie. Like, that's it. I'm going to have one cookie. And then we go and we have one cookie, but we feel guilt and shame. So we have to reward ourselves, and we reward ourselves with that cookie because it makes us feel the high. And it's this cycle. And instead of really seeing it for what it is, society, fitness influencers, and everyone is telling you, no, it's you. You need to stop eating. And you're like, I'm trying. So there's so much underneath just the calories that it's a joke to even just talk about the calories without addressing all the other things. And
Right.
when we focus on health and you start eating things like veggies and fruits, and if you eat meat, eating meat, and like starting to really focus on, is this good for my body? Is this truly fuel or poison for my body? You start looking at it like that, you will, of course, create a caloric deficit, because you can never eat in real food what you can in processed foods. Because I always joke around and I say this, but it's so true. You eat one mango, I've never seen anyone go, oh my God, I have to have 9 more mangoes or I'm going to like lose it. But when it comes to cookies, that's what we do. Mango doesn't do that to you. Mango's got water, it's got fiber. It sends different hormonal responses and chemicals in your body that tells you, hey, you're satiated, you're full. Like, take an apple. Let's say you're craving apples because that's what your body needs. You may have 2 apples and then you can't, like, you cannot chew that much apple anymore.
Right.
Where when you start processing it, even when you make applesauce and you start adding a little bit more sugar and all these other things, you take the fiber out, you can have it in ridiculous amounts. So when we focus on health and we make that slow shift, hey, instead of popcorn, let's have something else tonight. and then we'll have some strawberries, and then maybe later we'll have some popcorn. You make little shifts. Your taste buds have time to change. You have time to get away from food addiction, and you don't have to worry about calories. Like, we don't know if we just eat veggies and fruits and meat, it doesn't matter the amount of it that we eat. You can't gain weight. You cannot. Like, it's physically impossible. That's the problem with calories.
Yeah. And that's the problem of what processed sugars do. And so when we look at the labels of the food that we're eating, and we look at the processed sugars in there, and how they can mask the word sugar and give it, I don't know,
200
200 different names, and we're not affiliated with that name. It doesn't register. It's easy to register sugar. It's easy. High fructose corn syrup, that's easy to recognize because it's a label. And we've been told, and nobody can say that nobody's told them on high fructose corn syrup. It didn't exist. What, 30, 40 years ago? It did not exist. 3,000% more since, I think, 1972 or 1977. I don't know my number on that exactly, but 3,000% more in foods. And it's in everything. Why?
And it's GMO.
When we look at, yes, the GMO. So when we look at people of the 60s and the 50s and the early 70s, it wasn't until the mid 70s that you started to see a shift. And it was rare that you saw this shift. But then about the 80s, it started to become more prevalent. And by the 90s, it became like we saw it everywhere. And it was the flashing beacon on the road that was saying bridge out, and people weren't paying attention, because here's what the philosophy was: it's not going to happen to me. I'm stronger than that. You ask any addict, and they'll tell you, when they first started, I thought that I was stronger. I thought that I had more control. But it's the environment that we're in, and it's the surrounding that supports whatever it is that we're doing. And when you have that support, and this is, this goes back to the crab in the bucket. If you put a crab in the bucket and it's by itself, it will not try to climb out. Now you throw a second crab in there, one will try to get out, but the other one that was in there before is going to pull down on that one. And you can put 10 crabs in that bucket and they will keep the other one from climbing out.
Yeah.
And why is that? Because it's our environment doesn't want to promote what it is that we really desire. And so we fall into this trap of calorie counting because everybody's doing it. And it seems to be the easy way out. But 200 calories of broccoli, like you said, versus 200 calories of Jolly Ranchers,
very different in the body. This is also why there's so many more, one of the reasons why there's more autoimmune diseases, right? So our gut is screwed up, right? And not only that, but we're putting, what is it, like 10,000 new ingredients in our gut that were not around like 50, 100 years ago.
Right.
So what our gut is doing is creating an alarm at first, going like, hey, like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to process this. It creates inflammation in the body. But then instead of addressing the inflammation, because we were never taught to listen to our body, which is, again, I teach my clients, like, we have to get in tune with our bodies. Because we've never learned that, we'll just take an ibuprofen, or we'll take a aspirin, or whatever pills people are taking these days because they're feeling aches and pains. Well, that ache and pain is telling you something. And that's the thing. Food industry and the lobbyists and the whole industry has done such an amazing job at disconnecting people from food, starting from medicine, right? When medical students started, or medical school started taking nutrition out of them, which is a very interesting story of its own, which, if people are interested in, you really need to go and read that up. But why is there not food and nutrition in medicine? Let food be thy medicine. This was like from ancient times. all the herbs, all the things. Like I'm now in Europe, and there's still that knowledge and grandparents about like herbs and stuff, right? So we were at my kids' grandma's, and my husband cut himself, and she's like, "Oh, just take a leaf of this and just rub it on it." And I'm like, "What?" And so they still have that knowledge, but this was a normal thing just a few decades ago, especially in villages where now it's like, what medication do I need, right? And
Right.
I always say Western medicine is fantastic for things that are immediate, right? Like there's a car accident, fantastic. But when
Right.
it comes to treatment, it's horrible. It's not, it's like the saying goes, it's not healthcare, it's disease care. It's not made to cure. It's made to maintain for a long time. And when you're talking about the 70s and 80s and how it all shifted, it's like what the last time I checked statistics, and this has been years, so I'm really kind of concerned to even look it up right now. But last time I checked, about 10 years ago, a third of population in the US was obese and a third was overweight, which only leaves a third kind of in a healthy range. And that was for adults. This year, 2024, is the highest rates in children's cancer. To me, if we don't stop and say, what is going on?
Right.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but something's up. And you just start, like we talked about it last time, just ask why. Why is this happening? Why
Right.
all of a sudden? What's happening here? What have we changed? You'll start noticing it's the nutrition, it's the sleep, it's the plastic. And so it's the last thing is counting calories. There are
Right.
so many things that come across that come before it, because once again, we don't need to focus on weight loss. We need to focus on health. Because if I focus on health, I'll get health. If I focus on weight loss, I'll get weight because my brain is hearing weight. And we have to understand that we literally are what we eat, because what we eat breaks down to and feeds ourselves.
Mhm.
And if people who are like talking about meat, for example, for one, obviously we need to treat animals correctly. That's like a moral thing, right? Straight up. But even if we put that moral question aside, the animal, when you're eating animal meat, you're eating what the animal ate.
Right.
And if the animal ate hormones, if the animal ate GMO corn, if the animal was in a stressed environment where its cortisol and its stress hormones were raised up all the time, and if it was full of antibiotics, that's what I'm getting in that meat. That's what I'm getting. I'm not getting the protein that these people have told me I need to eat, 100 grams of. I'm eating what the animal ate. It goes back to what I was talking about, the sun, and it gives the energy to the plants, all of that. And it's disrupted somewhere, which is why our bodies are screaming to say we need to change something.
Exactly. And it's amazing how when you talk about the animal being stressed out and the environment that is it's experiencing, and that is now transferred over into the person that eats it. So yes, if you are eating improperly, even though you're counting these calories based on an average, you're already stressed out. Now you add stress to that. I went out to my car the other day, and I checked my oil, and oil was full, and I checked the windshield washer fluid. The car wouldn't start. I checked the windshield washer fluid. I had plenty of windshield washer fluid. And then I checked the brake fluid, and it was great. And when I turned the key over just to get battery power to the signal, the gauge that I put the sticky note over from, because I needed gas the other day, and I didn't want to stop. So if I just avoided it, and it just was kept flaring it. So I put this, I had one of those Post-it notes, and I just put it over that. And thankfully I got into my driveway, but it just stopped. And I'm like, well, I must be out of windshield washer fluid. And that's what happens. And I don't know if you're watching this in this video right now, but right now, I don't know what the heck is going on with the lighting, but it just keeps going in and out. And this is kind of one of those examples. because I have ADD and I experience that. So I'm hypersensitive to that light changing. Well, what happens is in another area of the room, there's light coming in that's stronger. So my camera compensates and says, hey, it's getting too bright. And this is what we do when we're eating food.
Yes.
It's saying it's too bright. We're going to slow down.
Yes.
And now you jump on the scale and it's a month later and you're like defeated because you think you're doing everything right and you go and make these major adjustments. So I just went into my settings and I made an adjustment on the lighting. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? Well, you can see that there's clouds and different things going on in the background. Well, in our bodies, there's things going on in the background. So if I just go to the main setting and I adjust it by the amount of calories that I'm bringing in, I'm not addressing the source of the problem of what's happening that's outside of my control. That light is outside of my control, but what can I do to compensate it? So it is going, what is specifically designed for me? What is my activity? What is my thought process? How much stress am I bringing in? What am I bringing into my body other than just the food intake and the calories that I'm bringing in? What is my thought process? Am I doing any breath work? Am I doing any cold therapy treatments? Am I doing any grounding? I mean, my gosh, simple free things that people can do that can actually change their calories. And I know for a fact that you have seen people that they call skinny fat.
Oh yeah, that's a whole nother thing. So I'm in Europe now, right? And we typically consider Europe that's healthier, right? And yeah, like you can't really find many. You can find some overweight people here, but like not many obese people. So when you look at it, you'll be like, yeah, this is healthier, but I know what they're eating. And I'm like, no, I don't think so. So they manage not to gain as much weight, but they're not necessarily healthy. And when we're talking about skinny fat, that's exactly what we're talking about. When we're talking about overall health, we're talking about how much body fat percentage, what's the body fat percentage that someone has, and how much muscle do they have. Mm-hmm. This is a thing that everybody can do at home that freaks people out, but let's do it. The healthy amount of body fat, if you take your two fingers and you tighten your abs and you pinch from your belly button on the side, from your belly button to as much fat as you can grab. For females, there shouldn't be more than an inch of body fat that you grab. For males, there shouldn't be more than half an inch of body fat that one grabs, because that section is the most important health-wise, where we carry body fat. And this freaks people out because they're always like, oh my God, I grabbed like 7 inches of body fat. And I'm like, that can be your start point. For one, first we have to address the guilt and shame that comes with that. Okay, you didn't just do this to yourself. Okay, and second of all, measure it like that. That's an indicator of your overall health. Now, skinny fat also means that they can be skinny, but they're not having the right amount of muscle. Muscle is extremely important, not only that there's a huge connection between muscle and brain function, but also muscle is important for bone health as well, because as we get older, we're going to lose muscle and bone if we don't use it. We lose anything that we don't use, right? So like the body is not going to maintain things that are not used. This is why people who don't work out don't have muscle, and people who work out have muscle, because they're challenging that muscle. But they're also building up bone density. And there's many, many, many other things that happen when we're building the muscle. So skinny fat can also be someone who it looks healthy, like they're not overweight, but they have fatty, liver, which basically means they have too much body fat around their organs, especially liver, which is making it, and heart too, which is making it very hard for all the organs to function. All of it is connected. See, we've been taught to, oh, my liver is hurting, I need to go to a specialist that's going to handle that. Oh, my heart is hurting, I need to go to a heart specialist. The only one that lately, and I know there's more, but the only one that lately I hear that's a doctor addressing it is Dr. Gabor Mate, who talks a lot on mind-body connection. And he used to be a doctor. He'll admit it. He's like, I'll be the first to tell you, like, I didn't know this. But we have been so conditioned to separate the whole body, where if I have a fatty liver, what else is going on in my body? Where's the root cause? What's the root cause? What is actually starting the problem, right? If someone used to have a cigarette addiction, they used to be a smoker, and now they are gaining weight because they're eating, there's an addiction there. So what are you trying to feed? What are you trying to get away from? Where's the root cause? It's not that you just, for no reason, became an addict on cigarettes and now transfer to food. There is something underneath there, right? And throughout the process of slowly changing through actions, we can change our belief system. So we have thoughts, we have emotions, and we have actions. Originally, thoughts started to, send messages to us how we should feel, and then what actions we take. But over time, it becomes a catch-22. So sometimes we cannot catch our thoughts or emotions, or we can't really control them just yet, not suppress, control. We can do that through actions. This is why I never tell people, like, you don't ever want to go on a diet. It's changing too much all at once. You don't ever want to say, I have not been working out, now I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week for 1 hour. No. Start with what you can do. Can you add 2 servings of veggies this week? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's going to take you a minute to figure that out as well. So, but it's enough effort that you can handle. Telling you to eat everything off the diet menu or the meal plan is throwing you off all kinds of ways. And you can do that for 2 weeks, but then week 3, you're like, I cannot do this anymore. So it takes time to shift, but it's not about the calories. We've addressed right now so many other things that it's like calories is just like, no, really like a joke to talk about when it comes to this, because there's so many more things to address. Maybe it's your gut health. Maybe it's just that you need to focus on eating more fermented foods and taking a pre and probiotic. Maybe it's the stress level. Maybe it's not getting enough sleep, right? Like there's all these things, my pen dropped. There's all these things that could be the reason for that. And sometimes people get frustrated on that journey. Like, I just want to know what it is. That's not the journey. That's the destination, right? So a part of the journey is me setting up different habits, me thinking differently about food, me changing my approach to myself and my sleep and my food. All of that is a process. All of that is a journey. Then I'm going to get to the destination of finding the root cause. That starts another journey of healing further, right? And the journey never really ends. And not that we always, I want to stress this out too. Not that we always have to heal, because that means we're always broken. It's just that we have parts of us that we need to heal. They're not who we are. They're parts of us. So we're not broken. We just need to change things up a little bit and heal so that things from the past do not affect our future.
Absolutely. Everything is connected, like you said. You cannot separate. This is the theology of Western medicine, is that, hey, if your shoulder hurts, let's address the shoulder. No, the shoulder is not the problem. The shoulder is just the site of the problem. The source is elsewhere in the body. When we get that right, the shoulder gets better. And it's the same way with our gut. It's the same way with our thinking. If we start thinking differently and just looking at it from a 1 degree shift,
Yep.
and go, okay, what is the thought process that I put into my mind the first thing in the morning? Was it, I got to check Facebook because I might have missed something? Joanne has put these wonderful posts of these cats in the tree, and I just got to see that. And then they get caught in the other loops, and now their mind is just overwhelmed before the day's begun. Now, all of those chemicals that the body has produced now affects the way that our body can process what we bring into it. Now, if you bring in acids and you're drinking, I'm not a coffee drinker, but if you're drinking a high acid drink now, and that's the first thing that you put in your body, well, let me tell you something. It may hype you up and it may keep you curbed, but it's not doing anything for the rest of the chemistry of your body.
Yeah.
And when we understand that we've been gradually indoctrinated into a system, and it's not our fault. They're just so good at it. They're so good at masking it. They're so good. It's like campaign day. Let me show you all the wonderful things that I'm going to do, and then they get in, and it's like they can't do anything because they're limited. Well, this is what's happening in our body. It's campaign day, and we see, gosh, I'm going to do this diet. I'm going to do the Mediterranean, or I'm going to do the keto, or I'm going to do the carnivore. I'm going to do this, that, or the other. It is a lifestyle change that makes the difference. It's not just jumping on the train, because the train comes to a stop. And if your body has not created a characteristic habit, now your identity is attached to something outside of you, and it's unmaintainable. And this is the thing, it's all connected.
And that's the journey, right? So, I've had clients who do good and then don't do good, and like they self-sabotage. I'm like, okay, well, there's something there underneath there that we need to address. Again, if it's, what is that saying? The definition of madness is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Yes.
But we just changed the name of a diet. Oh, I'm going to go on this diet. Oh, when I tried everything. I tried all these diets. That was the campaign day. They marketed you really well to tell you're going to drop all the weight. I can help anybody drop the weight in a few weeks. Here's what you do. You ready? Eat plain chicken breast and asparagus, 6 meals a day. You'll drop the weight, but you'll also lose your mind, because I've done it. I've done it in the bodybuilding competition. So you can drop the weight. That's not a problem, but then you're going to gain it back. So what's the point? Right. And it's also marketing of instant gratification. I want to lose 30 pounds in a month. Well, you could do that, but you're also going to lose your sanity. So what can we do? Where's the rush? What if I take the next 6 months to really focus on health and make all these changes? I tell my clients this all the time. You make one tiny change every week, but you stick with it. Tiny. I'm going to drink two sips of water before my coffee every morning. Like, simple. I'm going to do 10 squats a day. You make one of those every week. In 6 months, even if you didn't do it every single week, that's about 20 changes. Would 20 changes make a difference? Guaranteed. Guaranteed. So why not take the next 6 months and do that instead of doing the same thing over and over again with a different diet name, expecting different results? This is where, again, that, like you said, campaign day, they have done such a great job. Like, what people don't understand is food companies and social media, they have behavioral scientists behind these things. Right. Who, it's a team of people whose job is to make us keep doing what we're doing, which is eat more food that is making us sluggish, sit more on the couch so that you can scroll more. And then you can get sick, so we can give you this medication that you can be on to maintain whatever's going on in your body. And people fall for it. And my whole thing is, no, there is a different way. There is a better way, and you have control over it. Now, it's on you. If you don't want to take that responsibility, if you don't want to take that control, cool. But do me a favor, don't complain about it. There's a lot you can do about it, but the worst thing you can do for your body and your brain is not do anything to change it, or not be willing to open up to new ideas, new possibilities, new ways of doing things. And then you get stuck in that cycle of just complaining about weight or calories or whatever it is. No, there is a way. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated, but the answer is not in counting calories.
So I want to lead into this, because I'm positive that I know your philosophy on this. Somebody comes to you and says, okay, what do I have to do? Can you just give them a prescription for things that they have to do without knowing much more about them?
Absolutely not, right? Like my first onboarding call with my clients is like over 2 hours long, because we have to get into the psychology, into the lifestyle, into how that person thinks and feels. And I have people who've done that, right? Like, oh, can you just give me a meal plan? I'm like, could, but that's not going to do anything for you, because you've done meal plans before, right? And so not everybody's open to that. There are people who are still stuck in that cycle, and they still want to do the same diet. Cool. You're not I cannot help you at this point in time.
Right.
But if you want, I'll show you exactly. Together, I'm going to show you how you can get there with working with your schedule, your way of thinking, your stress level. I need to address what needs to be addressed first. And I'll tell you that, I'll call you out on it because I'm your coach. Right. And so then we have to address that. And there are times when they're like, I came to you for weight loss. Like, why are we meditating here? And I'm like, well, because without that, you're not going to be able to lose weight for good, because we need to lower that cortisol. You know, hormones are a whole nother subject, whether it's male or female. I talk about women's hormones a lot, but men have hormones that need to be addressed too. Men who are getting to overweight toward obese, a lot of times are really high in estrogen. And you can tell it by the shape of a person. If they're shaped more like a woman at that point, their body's high in estrogen. Mm-hmm. So that body is not operating in its optimal level on testosterone. When it comes to women, we have endocrine disruptors, again, in everything we use. We can start changing one thing at a time, but the body's showing signs. We can start by changing one thing at a time, getting our gut health under control, getting our sleep under control, getting our hormones under control, looking into our cycles, normalizing that. All of these things, when we get into the proper functioning. Once again, if you put regular gas in a diesel car, it's not going to work. And I just made a video today, I'm editing it right now for YouTube, where I said, if you bought a car that runs really well, and then you just like took some things out and you like loosened up the tires, like, would you expect it to run safely and well? No, but that's what we do to our body. And we are like, why are you falling apart? I don't understand. But it's like, well, it's in front of us. Another problem is, again, this whole marketing. Like, you have fitness influencers who show a six-pack all the time. They're like, just do crunches and you're going to get a six-pack. And it's like, that's just not how the body works. Have we not learned that yet? Have we not seen that yet? Right. And so we fall for instant gratification. We fall for it because we want that. Nobody wants to wait for things. It's not fun. Oh, you're going to lose weight in a year. Yay. But that's not how the body works. The body doesn't like anything drastic. It doesn't like a drastic diet. It doesn't like a drastic change in a workout regimen. It doesn't like change in the sleep schedule that's drastic. It doesn't like drastic changes in habits. It doesn't like drastic changes in anything. Right. It is only on rare occasions that I have once done it myself, and I have witnessed a few other people do it, where they get so to a point where they're like so sick of themselves and of the repetition that they say it with so much conviction, and they say, I am done. Things are changing. Right. That overrides the previous beliefs, and that person can quit things cold turkey and move on. But that's very rare, so I wouldn't count on that. For most people, it's about making these small shifts that are then going to create the good snowball effect and going to create that momentum that we're going to shift more and more. And then everything around us starts shifting, but at the rate that we can handle it. And that's the true success, that at the rate that we can handle it, at the rate that we can sustain it, whether it's calories or eating, whether it's workouts or sleep or whatever it is, it has to be sustainable.
Yeah, the idea behind, if our motivation is short term, then it's attainable, it's achievable, but it's not longevity. Yeah. And this is where I hear a lot of, especially women will say, I got to lose 20 pounds by the time this wedding comes, because I got to get into this dress. I'm either in the wedding or I got to look good for the wedding. And then after the wedding, you talk to them a month later and they're putting the weight back on, because their reason for doing it is not a concrete foundational motivation. And motivation by itself is worthless. Motivation does not last. It does not last. And it's drawing that line in the sand and saying, you know what, I'm going to change my lifestyle. But my why has to be strong enough. And when you hear something, I remember the first time that I heard about fasting, I mean, true fasting. And it was 24 years ago. And I heard this preacher talking about fasting and doing a fruits and vegetable only fast. And he had a biblical reference to that. And it hit me like a brick wall. And immediately, like I wasn't prepared or anything. I did that fast. I did 10 days. My body detoxified. And what I experienced was something that I wanted to share with other people. So when I started talking about this in church and started talking to people about this, they never heard of it before. So it was totally foreign. And they thought that I'd gone off my rocker. They just thought that I was just one more eccentric thing, to do. And I had people then begin to do this, and the results and the experiences in life totally took a different trajectory. Now, I know we're not talking about fasting, but I just want to throw this one more thing in there. I had a person in the church, and his wife was bulimic. So she would gain weight and then she'd lose it. She'd throw up, and she went through this cycle. She ended up in the hospital, and they didn't think she was going to live because her body went into shock so bad. They had her on feeding tubes. They had her on everything. And I told her husband, I said, what we're going to do a 24-hour fast. And we're starting right now. Now, my lunch was just about ready to be delivered. But when the moment of immediacy comes into play, this is what happens for most people is they are ready. When they're on their deathbed, they're ready to make a change. I say, why not make the change beforehand? Yeah. Why not create a lifestyle? Now, so we did a 24-hour fast, water only for 24 hours. And he said, the whole eating thing is what got my wife in the hospital. And she'd gone through this for 20 some years. Said, this is not about a diet. This is not about eating. This is another realm. This is a spiritual realm. And we're going to do this because we're spiritual beings. Okay, so we're just taking up a human flesh experience. But the idea behind that is that when we did that, the next day, her results elevated. They were like baffled. The doctors were baffled. And it is when we come together and when we understand that we're not just flesh, we're not just a shoulder or a knee or a hip, that we have multifaceted things. So when you only focus on one thing, the calories, you're missing the big picture.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
It's just, this is a topic that I'm passionate about because it is about overall health.
Yes.
It's not doing one thing. It's not just doing, and crunches, my God, if you want to talk about neck damage that happens for most people that do crunches, just continue to do crunches and let me know what cervical spine is telling you in 10 years.
And that's the thing, again, that kind of connects to our last conversation about asking questions like why and like questioning things, right? And so, when I first heard about fasting, it was about 15 years ago. And it was actually one of my clients when I had the fitness studio. So I was deep into fitness, right? Like I was brainwashed to do like 5 or 6 meals a day. And she came to me, actually, she shared about the 5-2 fasting, which I'm still not a fan of. But anyway, she shared it with me and I was like, no, you can't do that. I was like, I remember it because I was so deep into fitness, like, no way, like that cannot be healthy. So of course I calmed down. I went home. I was like starting to do research. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. And so I'm like, well, I guess I should try it, right? And that's when I started really experimenting with fasting and learning about it. And that's when it really started making sense. But once you see it, you can't unsee it, right? You're like, wait, that's how humans lived for all these millions of thousands of years. That makes sense, right? And you start listening to other people, and now obviously there's a whole lot more on fasting. But like another thing that happens in the 24-hour fast that probably happened with that lady is her gut health, her gut bacteria was reset. And because it was reset, she was not having crazy cravings anymore. So a lot can happen. Like I had a binging disorder when I was going through bodybuilding, and bodybuilding community doesn't want to talk about it. There's so many issues there with body. And I get it because I was so addicted to food. I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't just stop. It was like more powerful than me. So when people tell you, oh, just stop eating, it is not that simple. Once again, we're not like robots. So it's like math, eat 2 + 2 calories is 4. Well, that's not how the body works. That's really not how the body works.
Right.
So we have to get more in tune with the body as a whole, the mind, the emotions. We have to give space and time to things to change. And that's what I tell my clients. Like, this is not a journey that's going to end in a day, but we have 3 or 6 months to work together, or even a year with some people that I've been working with. And it's like the change is outstanding, because again, it's not just that they changed the way they approach food. It's
Right.
that everything around them changed because they changed. They dealt with things they didn't want to deal with, right? They stopped suppressing the emotions. They stopped letting past dictate their future. They changed the thought pattern. They wake up differently now. And it's like, wow. And then you start looking forward to the future, because you're like, if I change this much, how much more is ahead? So to end this is to say, calories are a joke. That is like the last thing you want to worry about. You want to focus on health, and that's where you want to start.
That's it. And Lex, I'm trying to bring up your website, but I'm just going to say it. It's lex.pro.
Yes.
And for some reason, technology is
It's
not.
showing up.
Is
It's
it
showing
showing
up.
up?
Yeah,
Oh, it's
it
not
is.
showing up on my side. I don't know what.
Okay, it's showing up on mine, but it's also, I also have a YouTube. So if it's easier for people, just YouTube me and you'll find me there. My name
Perfect.
is spelled differently in LEKSVUCKO, and they can find me on YouTube.
Fantastic. Okay, so thank you once again. And I know that I've just not only added to the validation of what I believe, it's getting another perspective. It's getting another set of eyes on this, and it's helping me as well. And that's the beauty of when two or more come together and talk this through. It's not just that we're just singing our own song. We're actually singing the song for other people. And so thank you for being here with me. And it's a pleasure. So
Thank you for having me.
until then, hey, listen, if you have enjoyed this, I want you to like and share, subscribe to the channel. It really helps the algorithm, and it also gives us the ability to bring you the information that you're looking for. If you've got a question, send me a DM, send me a message. There's multiple ways to get a hold of me. You can get a hold of me at 360lifewithoutlimits.com, book a virtual coffee, and we'll have a conversation. There's nothing for sale. It's just a virtual coffee. And I don't drink coffee, so it's really virtual. So the idea is let's do a discovery. Let's find out what's going on and what it is that you want to do. And if I can't help you, I know a bunch of people that can. So you're not alone in this. You're not broken. And until the next time, be outstanding and have an outstanding week. All right.